Jeffrey Dahmer soaked in blood. The Unabomber blowing up. Waco, Texas, and Heaven's Gates. Aliens modified, meant for apes. Hitler faked his death and then escaped. Bigfoot and the Mothman. Son of Sam talking to dogs again. Witches, ghosts, and goblins. Mysterious noise and hauntings. Dark arts in the skull and bones. Most celebrities are probably cloned. So if you're feeling all alone, crack a beer and get stoned. I welcome you to the podcast Strange Brew. We're here to entertain you. We're here to entertain you.
It's about to get strange.
Welcome back, everybody, to the show. You know me. If you don't by now, I am the Reptilian. Tomcat, a.k.a. Tom Thompson. I have so many aliases, I need to cut them down. Our Billy will get mad. I am here. Who am I joined by?
The horniest little boy for horror. Your favorite horror boy, Aaron.
Yeah. We're gonna. So everybody that doesn't know, for Class Horrorcast, we're definitely gonna create some horny for horror T-shirts. I was even thinking of designs that we can do, or little stamps we can throw on videos, because we're gonna start a whole new thing when it comes to the horror community. We're definitely uncensored and stuff like that. So welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm pretty excited for this. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. After diving down a deep rabbit hole, I have my my robe on, ready to go dive down inside the butthole of the rabbit. And then as we tuck inside ourselves, like we're like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, inside the butthole of the rabbit, he starts going down the rabbit hole, and we join him on that journey.
Is this like some kind of psyop or you're like trying to put us off the trail of what you guys are actually up to? Maybe you're part of the.
You think I'm Jewish? I don't know if I am. That, you know what's funny? That 23andMe thing, you know, like I would never do that because I think that they use your DNA for, who knows, cloning or something. Some guy, right? Have you ever done it?
No, but I often wonder, like, because I know people like people in like extended friend groups that have done it. And like I always wonder, I'm like, okay, so you do this shit, like, and then they give you back this report, but like that, like,
how do you know that's real?
Yeah, like that could be just me on the other end being like, yeah, you're like part Jewish.
Dude, somebody had their lizard like lick the stick and like make sure that there's a lot of like saliva on it, and he sent it in, and then it came back and it said the lizard was a Hasidic Jew, and it said that it was like a European, and he was like, this proves it's fake. And he's like, what animal do you want me to do next? And they sent it back, and it like, there's no way it would have came out with any human DNA, or maybe it would, but the guy was proving essentially that they're lying to you. They're just telling you fake answers. So someone could be like, wow, I'm quarter native. Wow, I get a victim card. And then it's just like, you're not actually, you know?
Really good business model, actually. It's like, you lick a strip or whatever, send it to me, I'll throw it in the trash, and then I'll charge you like $200 or whatever.
Just to give you a fake answer, or they give you some truth, who knows? But that guy literally, and he showed like, there's a whole video on it. He's like, look, and he's like, it's been a month or two when it came back, and then he's like, it literally says that my lizard is like a European Hasidic Jew or something like that. And I was like, weird. Wild. So I want to have a disclaimer for everybody before everyone gets offensive.
Anti-Semitic piece of fucking shit.
And really starts to analyze this. So I have questions, right? That's all I'm here for, is I question everything. And there's stuff that there's no answers for. And all the stuff that is happening in the world, I want to talk about. I'm not going to say that, Jews are the boogeyman, like fucking Russia and everyone else wants you to think. I just want to analyze things. And I've said this on the Secret Society episode, is that there is bad Christians, there is bad Muslims, there are secret societies of all factions of religions. So I want to dive into something like, if you're not allowed to talk about it, there's something going on. Then those who are you can't critique are the people that are most likely in control of you. The ones you can't criticize are probably the ones that have control over you. And I will say that the term anti-Semitic is a very blanket term to have people not ask questions. Like, why are you doing this and killing a bunch of Muslim children because of self-defense? Oh, that's anti-Semitic. You can't say that. And this is my problem with this stuff, of why I want to start diving down this rabbit hole. I've been watching a bunch of documentaries about Zionism and the connections and all that stuff. And just because, and some Zionists are not even Jewish, but they claim they are to hide behind it. But it's also the idea that that it's a different section. They don't even believe in God. You know?
Where are you on the because I noticed this when I kind of went down the rabbit hole for research on this. Where do you stand on, like, I guess the how would I say this? I feel like when you dive into something as deep as this, there's always other people, not necessarily saying that it's not real or it's a conspiracy or it's not true or anything like that, but guys who, I don't know if they're gone too far or whatever, but they're like,
Yeah.
oh, the Rothschild, the Khazarian Mafia, all that stuff. It's all bullshit being put out there to distract you from the real thing, or
Yeah.
it
That's
distinct.
what
I find, like, sometimes I kind of go crazy and I'm like, am I having like some kind of psychotic breakdown or like an overload of information?
That's what they want you to believe. I do think that, right? Because the roots go deep and it is weird if you actually like the idea of following the money, right? And following the key players of what's going on in the world, right? And that's the you have to if you'd end up doing research. That's why like everyone called David Icke like anti-Semitic, like piece of shit or whatever, or like conspiracy theorist. He's anti-Semitic, is because he started diving down the rabbit hole and realizing why are these bloodlines connected to this, why this and that, and then if you start diving down to it, like all of the why they're like 80% of the people in Congress have dual citizenship with Israel. There's stuff like that people don't want to question. Why are the people that are sponsoring and funding the open border invasion? Why are they Jewish? Like they're why if you follow the money, why are there so many people that are connected to Pfizer that are Jewish? Why? And they're only 1% of the world population at the end of the day. And then it's the idea that they've been duped on some regard, which I think all religion has been. And I have Christian friends and stuff like that. And I think that they've even been swayed and brainwashed in some extent. But it's not as harmful, at least from what I see it. But then there's like with the West Baptist Church, right? And they're like a crazy section of Christianity. You know what so there is good and bad on both. There's Muslims that believe in Sharia law. That's bad. That's horrible what they do to women. So all around the world, in all sections of religion, there is bad and evil things going on behind the scenes. And that's why I say there is people, and I believe like George Soros, dinosaur, reptilian, but like that these people are connected through bloodlines, and then they say, oh, I'm Jewish or I'm this, because then it's a blanketed term of you can't talk about this. There is a big problem, right? Is this idea of like, oh, we don't control the world. That's anti-Semitic. And then it's like you say anything about it, and then you're canceled, kicked off, deplatformed. Really, especially if you're a big enough voice on X now, right? It's supposed to be this bastion of freedom of speech. Elon Musk, he represents freedom of speech, but make sure you get the microchip and the Neuralink in your brain so they can control all your fucking thoughts and put advertisements in your head. So it's always funny that people are like, need some sort of savior like that. But if you start openly questioning stuff and showing evidence that backs up all of this history of that, Zionists were using their own people and killing them to convey this agenda of creating Israel to begin with, then starts to make sense in the end.
I've also seen, I don't know what way you're gonna like structure the episode or whatever, if we're gonna
Yeah,
go through like a timeline, but
kind of, yeah.
I had seen things people were talking about, like the internet being like part of the big master plan, and now like the fear that like the internet may be backfiring on like
The
what
cabal.
like what they
Yeah.
intended it for, and now like there's a real like conversation about like how do we just like end the internet, and so
Yeah.
in a way.
Oh, I know, and that's why I'm saving up all my episodes, because either way they're going out to the air, no matter if the internet's here or not. I'll make sure they go into people's ears. But like but the thing is, if they do, for some reason, take down the internet, right? It's going to cause mass disruption, and it's going to wake people up more, because if people are glued to their phone and their Netflix and stuff like that, what do you think's going to happen? It's going to go back like the 80s, and people are going to realize what's going on, especially nowadays, because we've had access to this information. At the end of the day, I've never seen so many people awake. I've never seen so many people question, well, why can't we talk about this? Why are you justifying the deaths of over 10,000 children at this point because of the defense? Like, it shows, like, people show videos of Gaza, and then it's like, did we find Hamas? Or are they in there? Why was there some of the Mossad agents and the IDF or whatever going into hospitals and shooting people that are like already in wheelchairs and stuff? There's some weird stuff going on that nobody can talk about. And if you can't talk about it, then I think it's something that you need to talk about. If people are telling you not to talk about it, it needs to be talked about at the end of the day. Like, if everyone's interested and wants to hear a totally different take and someone that's not afraid to speak out, look up Stu Peters. That guy's a G. I would love to have him on the show. He doesn't care. He's like, I want to expose the truth. This is more important. I care about my family. I want to actually say what's going on and stuff. And even you have, like, I have a question, right? You see, I was going to bring this up before we really get started. Here, let me cast my screen. But what is going on, right? What is going on with all the presidents? What is this? Why all the presidents going to the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, which was an ancient temple? It's the wall that is left of this ancient temple. But why? This makes no fucking sense, man. That's why I'm like, look, everybody, your savior, Donald Trump, also cries at the Wailing Wall. Why do they all pledge allegiance to this wall?
Strange. I didn't know he had been there.
Look who's that. Look at that. It's just fucking weird. All these people. Whoops. I did picture out a picture. But like it is weird. Like so many people, almost every president. There's Bill Clinton, Obama, obviously showing many of Trump, everyone. And then it's like the question of why are they doing that? Why is everyone need to pledge allegiance? Like that Javier guy, the Argentina president that everyone wanted in because he was a populist libertarian. He went there, like, I posted the video on, look up the Reptilian X if you want my political stuff. And he's like crying, having a fit at the wall. And he was like, Argentina, it's like 80% of the country is Catholic. So why it doesn't make sense, man.
So in your head, then, what do you think the purpose of that is?
I think it's to show your allegiance.
You think
Thanks,
it's
man.
like
There's some people in the chat right now, sweet.
Like some weird, like, fucking I don't know, like dominance thing or whatever from their point of view of being like, you will submit to. And this is like,
and you're showing your allegiance the same way Elon Musk went to Auschwitz. And listen to me. I'm never going to deny that I do think that the Holocaust happened. Do I think who we think perpetrated in the way that we do is factual? No, because, like, listen to this. This is provable. Look it up. They said 4 million people, more or less. Obviously, they think Jewish people died in Auschwitz. They researched it in the 90s, and all these articles came out. You can look this up, and they said it was about maybe 1 million and a half. So does that contribute to the 6 million people that died, specifically the Jewish people that died? And at the end of the day, right, I have nothing against Jewish people. Hear me correctly. I do not care what religion you come from, because there's people trying to claim that someone called me a racist, and I was like, it's not a race of people. And they're like, yeah, it is. And then they're like, they said something about the Muslims killing children, and I was like, you've blanketed termed me, and now you're doing the same thing about brown people. And this is my issue, right? Is like everyone now, like I said on the Secret Society episode, showing their real feelings about Muslims and brown people. Yeah,
it's I didn't realize, because to be honest, I can't lie, before you brought this up, I had heard very little. I had heard of the term, but I never really knew. And I was kind of like, you know what? I've never seen enough of it pop up in front of my face. So maybe it's just like some like really deep, like, internet lore thing.
Yeah.
Until, like, I started to actually like look a bit more, and I was like, there's a lot of stuff mentioned here that's like in the mainstream. And I'm kind of shocked that, like, we don't hear more about any of this.
Because they don't want to cover it up. I say follow the money, right? Everyone talks about, we get taught about fascism in school so much, and how, and I'll listen to me too also. I will never say that guy with the little mustache it was ever the good guy, because there's people that perceive that, but he was part of it. I heard that like the Republican Party funded him during World War II through Israel, so through the Jewish Bolsheviks, to essentially like to create Israel at the time. They had a deal, and I'll play. Actually, let's play the video now. Let's hear this, and then we'll get back into this.
Channel 5. This is the 10 o'clock news with Deborah Norville.
Coming out revealing secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933, which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine.
Deborah, with the rise of Adolf Hitler to power in the spring of 1933, the Jews of the world were faced with a dilemma. They could raise a cry of protest, a cry few would heed, or they could make a deal with Hitler. A deal that would bring a step closer their dream of an independent Jewish state. American Jews marched calling for the boycott of all German exports. Jews throughout Europe echoed that call. So did Jews everywhere. But a group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David.
While the German National Socialist government had a working relationship with the sect of Zionist Jews, they were simultaneously hostile to a primarily secular Jewish movement, which has some post-World War II historians confused.
Isn't that weird? Why we never taught about that? It's very weird. Do you have a real moves, or is that?
No, that's a false moves.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm easing myself into this.
Yeah, so there's stuff like the Star of David is like a satanic symbol. People could be like, whoa, how can you say that? That
Anti-Semitic piece of fucking shit.
But like really, like if you actually research it, eventually we're gonna be bringing this up also. And I've been watching a documentary that everyone told me not to watch. It's going on Patreon. The first part's already up. But it's the Europa, the Last Battle. And I fucking tried to fact check it. I literally did. I searched and searched. Every website that went against it didn't give you facts or sources. They just said it was anti-Semitic blanketed term. And then they provided no sources to say how it was inaccurate. And then it was all Jewish sponsored websites. As soon as you look into this stuff, it's like, you can tell that it's a Jewish website or whatever like that. And if you control everything and all this, what it means and the facts, then at the end of the day, and then I looked up, I looked and I found this guy trying to discredit it. And then he just didn't give, he just made opinion statements. He didn't give facts. So I looked and I found this website that provided all the sources in the documentary. And it said that it was 73% correct, which isn't the greatest, but it said that the stuff that they couldn't prove, either they couldn't find a source for it, or it might've been just opinion based, or the quote was quoted wrong. Like it wasn't the accurate, like it was, it wasn't an accurate quote. And it's fascinating because people always talk about, what happened during World War II, but nobody mentions the Bolshevik Revolution, which eventually I want to do an episode about. And that killed like tens of millions of people. The communists in fascism and communism are equally bad in my eyes. I think democracy, we've never seen a real democracy, and now they're the excuse of democracy is now a thing to kill. It's just like, we're spreading democracy, but we're leaving a wake of bloodshed, right? But it is weird because I'm going to start diving into the communist aspect of stuff, because you start to research that stuff and how, Karl Marx was a Jew. Both his parents were Jewish, and he thought he was talking to the fucking devil, man. I want to get this book called The Devil and Karl Marx, and he thought I was possessed by like some sort of devil. A little weird.
The whole thing is just wild though, and I feel like it's if you look at a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of there's a lot of similar threads in like in these things. They all kind of interconnect in some way. A lot of these topics we've talked about, whether it be from years and years ago right up until modern day. And it's a really clever tactic, and I think I've said this multiple times before. Such a clever tactic to set up, how would I say it, culture and culture is probably the best way I would say it. In a way that anybody who questions or disagrees or asks anything about it is seen as like some fucking like lunatic, like domestic terrorist who like needs
Which
to
is
be
crazy.
silenced and like
Yeah.
cancelled.
And then what the problem is now with cancel culture and today, and I want to get Jeremy McKenzie, the raging dissident, on the show at some point. He's just in court stuff, dealing with a bunch of shit because he was someone that was openly spoken out, a veteran. And he's like, what, you afraid to be called a racist or anti-Semitic? He's like, the truth is the truth. People are so afraid to be labeled something. And I said this in a video that will be coming out on my political Instagram, is that essentially like they love when you label yourselves. They want you to all label yourselves and label everybody else because they put you in groups. You're more easy to control like that. And it is very true. But I have questions because
something strange is going on.
There's something weird going on. So let's get right into this. I have 4 shots of whiskey in this coffee. And no, this is not a Jewish cup. Just kidding. It's a death mask. Everyone's fucking jokes. Calm down. I don't actually hate someone. But the question is too, right? How can they be from that area, right? How can they?
The real Jews are black people, okay? Real Jews are black, okay? How the hell you
hear that, Captain?
How the hell you gonna have some African people, some white people living in the hottest fucking land in Africa during that time? It wasn't no motherfucker things. It wasn't no motherfucker suntan lotion. Back then, motherfuckers got burnt up.
My white ass just.
You motherfuckers can't go outside with just motherfucking suntan lotion. You get burned up, 3rd-degree, kind of like a motherfucking lizard.
That's like just points to this stuff. They're like, oh no, like it's fucking the reptilians are actually Jews. And I'm not saying that because they've inserted themselves, in my opinion, in every religion, in every bloodline. There's all these different bloodlines, which we'll actually be getting into on the show. I'm going to do the 13 Illuminati bloodlines and break it down of each family. But let's just fucking dive right into this. We've been going on for too long. So the curtain is now being lifted, pulled back to fully expose the Khazarian Mafia and the evil plan to infiltrate and tyrannize the world and eradicate all Abrahamic religions and allow only their Babylonian Talmudism and also Luciferianism, Satanism, and the ancient Baal worship. We'll get into Baal. I want to. That the Baal demon, I think it's fucking fascinating. I found some articles on it. Eventually, we'll dive into that stuff. The Talmudist shit is fascinating, man. They think of anyone else that isn't that like a dog. They call us goyim, which is essentially like a slang for anyone that's not Jewish. And it's funny because like, not everyone's like this. Not all Jewish people are like this. Get this straight, right? Hear what I'm saying. I'm not blanketing term the whole Jewish people or anything like that. People need to really understand that shit. But like the people that believe in some of these certain ideologies or the different sections of that religion, some of it is very dark. There is I've been researching into this thing. I can't remember what it's called. Zebetarianism, but essentially like it's a certain section, this Messiah, and it's like, it was weird. It was like 1660 or 1666, something like that. And this guy claimed to be like the Jewish Messiah. And I can't remember the word for what the group ended up calling, but it swayed a lot of like Jewish people at the time. And they believe that you'll get redemption through sin. Like that you have to be debaucherous to seek redemption. And they casted out the idea of God and having ethics and morals. And like I said on the Secret Society episode, David Wilcock talks about this. I'll repeat this because he believes that essentially that these people, Freemasons, some of these like societies and these people, they believe that if you have any ethical or moral guidelines, then you're not actually free, that you're actually a prisoner. So it would make sense that they want this debaucherous world that we live in of chaos, right?
Yeah, and like not to tie him into it, but I was listening to, and I never listened to their show. Who are the guys that have like the fucking Happy Dad beer? Is it, or like seltzer or whatever it is?
I can't remember.
Full Send, or like some podcast thing or
I
something like
never,
that.
yeah, I never watched them.
Yeah, they had Sean Strickland on a couple of months back. It must have been, and like
Oh, I was gonna listen to Theo Vaughn have him on actually.
I purposely just don't listen to them because like they're just, it's just not for me. Like,
yeah, 100%.
But I listened to like half of that episode, and he kind of talks about a lot of that stuff. He was like, he was basically telling them on their own show. He was like, "Good for you, you're making shit tons of money and whatever, but you're part of like the issue we have now because you're like peddling smut and like garbage to kids and stuff."
Yeah.
And it's become an obsession, and we have like basically a world of like dumbed down, like docile men.
We do, man. It's 100% true. They're feminizing men in a lot of ways. And this is their purpose, because I've said this before. And look, we send generations of strong men off to war to die. That was on purpose. That wasn't like, oh, like they believe they're fighting for the country and the freedom that we're supposed to hold dear, right? We're supposed to care about this and want this freedom. We're supposed to want to uphold these freedoms that your ancestors died for. But I believe it was also being used for either population control, because millions of people died, and the idea they got rid of thousands of millions of strong men. And it would take like really for even like Canada's a bunch of complacent pussies, in my opinion. Not everybody, but a lot of people are, and they're just walking by all the death and destruction, the homelessness. Like, Canada's fucked right now, man. This country is fucked beyond belief. I know Ireland is too, and they're just eroding it from the inside out, because I believe these people are like communist, and the Bolsheviks. I think they still have their fingers in a lot of stuff that we don't even notice, and they don't want you to know about it. But like, if you had 20,000 strong, able-bodied men actually like stand up and go towards government building. I'm not saying doing anything bad, but I'm saying just standing up, speaking out, the world would change. I'm telling you right now. It's crazy.
It's kind of wild though that like it's in a situation where like something as simple but as difficult as that could be the solution, but it's like when you say it like that, it's like that shouldn't really be that hard to achieve, but then for some reason everything has been structured in such a way that people are like, no, can't do that.
I know. I don't want to be called a racist for speaking out about mass immigration that is destroying the country from within. Like, I don't want to speak about that because I'll be called a name. It's crazy. We're now that we're in that point of the world and history and the present day of like being like, you're afraid to speak out because someone's going to call you a name on the internet. Give me a fucking break. So with the present day Khazarian Mafia, the history of the Khazarians, specifically the Khazarian Mafia, the world's largest organized crime syndicate that Khazarian oligarchy morphed into by the deployment of Babylonian Money-Magick, has been completely nearly removed from the history books. The present day Khazarian Mafia knows that they can operate or exist without the abject secrecy. Therefore, they have spent a lot of money having its history cut from the history books in order to prevent citizens in the world from learning about its evil beyond imagination that empowers the world's organized crime cabal. So the author of this article has done their best to resurrect their lost secret history of the Khazarians and their large international organization, crime syndicate. It's interesting because they refer to the Khazarian Mafia. It makes this history available to the world via the internet, which is the new Gutenberg press. But at the end of the day, right, I don't know if this is 100% accurate. I don't know if it's 70% accurate. I'm just saying, let's just ask questions, right? I'm just curious, man. I'm just curious, man.
I'm a pioneer. I'm an explorer. I'm a human, and I'm coming. I'm animated. My heart's big. I like to eat. I like to fight. I like to I like to have children. I got a life force. It's got hot cum going through it fast. I like to eat children. I'm a throwback. And fires everywhere. I'm a human, and I'm...
Okay,
he's my favorite person ever.
So funny, man. But he had so he had Stu Peters on like recently, the last couple of months, and then Stu started pressing him on like the Khazarian Mafia stuff, the Zionist, and Alex Jones just put his head. He's like, I don't want to talk about this. And it's just like now you're starting to show who really owns you too, man. Because like essentially you're showing who owns you, because you're like, no, I can't talk about that because he's already in enough trouble. But it's been exceedingly difficult to reconstruct this hidden secret in the history of the KM, the Khazarian Mafia. So please excuse any minor inaccuracies or errors which are unintentional due to the difficulty to dig through the true history of the Khazaria. So it was Mike Harris that connected the dots and made the actual discovery of the presence of the Khazarian Mafia's secret history and blood oath to take revenge on Russia for helping Americans win the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and their blood oath revenge against America and Americans for winning these wars and sustaining the Union. At the Syrian Conference on Combating Terrorism and Religious Extremism, of course, December 1st, 2014, in his keynote address, Veterans Today's senior editor and director Gordon Duff disclosed publicly for the first time ever that the world's terrorism is actually due to a large international organized crime syndicate associated with Israel. The disclosure sends shockwaves through the conference almost instantly around the world, as every world leader received reports of Gordon Duff's historical disclosure that same day, some within minutes. And the shockwaves from the historical speech continue to reverberate around the world even to this day. It's pretty interesting. So this Gordon Duffy guy, but like, it's kind of funny because if you start to really look into this stuff, right? Like I said, I did a video. I was like, okay, so imagine you wanted to, take a land and a territory, right? You wanted to dominate over a territory and advance, expand. Right? They expand your territory, taking over your land like a Israeli expansion, as Moral Technique would say. And if people really want to know some truth about this stuff, look up a Moral Technique. He's been on a couple podcasts recently, and he talks about this in depth, and he's very well researched. And and I was like, so what would you do? Would you, if you had the money and power, wouldn't you create these terrorist organizations? Because they give you an excuse: problem, reaction, solution. You create the problem because you have the solution at the end of the day that you want for your agenda. So then everyone reacts to it and like, oh my God, look at Hamas beheading the 40 babies. That never happened. And then people freak out, and there's people still saying that stuff, even though it's not factual. And then it's like, it gives them an excuse. Well, they got to defend themselves. And then it's like, oh, well, they've leveled Gaza now and they're impeding into their territory. And Netan, crazy motherfucking Yahoo, said, like, he is literally a Yahoo. He literally said that he doesn't want them to have any land back, essentially, in one of his speeches. And it's just funny. I was thinking about this too. I did a high dose of mushrooms yesterday. It fucking hit me. I was laying there like in my own thoughts, thinking about the world, and I was taking a shit, like tripping balls. And I was like, it's pretty weird that Tucker Carlson might be the person standing between World War III. You know what I mean? That one person that's actually trying to I haven't listened to it yet, but I want to today.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what do you make of that whole thing?
I'm never going to believe that Vladimir Putin is the good guy, but I'm going to say that he's been betrayed as the boogeyman. Russia has been betrayed as this boogeyman to the West for how long? And then meanwhile, your own government is like invaded all these different countries. NATO said they wouldn't impede and get closer to Russia, and they kept surrounding Russia all the fucking time. And then it's just like, you guys did this. Stop acting like they're the bad guys when you really are. He kept saying, stop doing this, don't do that, don't impede, and they kept doing it. And it's like, we are the issue. Everyone's like, this patriotism, gotta love America. Sure, for what it's based on, the values and morals of what it should have been. But like America, and even with Canada's help at some point too, America that specifically has killed millions and thousands of people, fucking went to, Afghanistan, controlling the poppy fields for heroin that is going directly to the big pharma companies, which eventually will be an episode. But like, you know what I mean? The West has done way more, in my opinion. Russia, the big bad boogeyman.
Yeah, and the other side of that is like, I often wonder in situations like that, I'm like, what purpose, or why are you even involved in some of these situations? Like when I think about some of like the locations and like the conflicts that are involved, and I'm like, how did you manage to insert yourself into the middle of all that?
All of it. And it's funny, and it seems like it's directly funded through Israel. I believe, and I'll say this again because I want people to understand what I'm saying. Never take my words out of context. I think there's one race, the human race. We're all connected. If you hurt somebody else, you hurt your fucking self. I truly believe that. They were all part of this karmatic rule. We're all part of this. So at the end of the day, there's one race, the human race, but some people have been corrupted on all sides, you know, because
Yeah, like if
eventually I'll
anyone
dive into some of the
believes,
Middle Eastern occultism stuff too. So
like if anyone actually believes for a second that when it gets to this kind of level, I don't like, look, I'll play devil's advocate for a second and say I don't know how true some of this stuff is.
yeah.
I definitely believe a big aspect of it. There is certain parts of it where I'm a bit like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but okay. But anyone that thinks like when you get to this kind of level, like where you're mentioning, you know, the likes of the Clintons, Bush, Rothschild, all those Soros, all those kinds of names. If you think for a second that there's any like chosen group or like we're pledging allegiance to whatever religion or whatever, it's so far I think beyond that, and like that could all just change like that. Like I mean, these people,
100%.
it's like you said, like it is kind of like the plot for a horror movie or something like that in a way, because it's like these people don't, there is no like allegiance to like people or humans or anything. This is like,
Yeah. Or the secret art of making money from nothing. Also, using the power of pernicious usury to accumulate their interest. So, listen to this, everybody. You need to understand this is still going on today. Why you're broke and why there's so much inflation and why you'll never get ahead is because they control the money. They control the system. If you print more money than there is any value, the money becomes valueless, and then you have nothing. And then meanwhile, they have all your wealth. COVID literally created that more than ever before. It brought up the biggest transfer of wealth in history, and they use this. They were so Jewish people specifically, well, some of the Zionists were kicked out of all these Christian nations and Catholic whatever. They were kicked out because of the usury debt-based money system of like, well, you give me this much, I'll give you back a little more. The idea of goldsmiths and them giving you back more receipts essentially than you had gold. And this is what's created this money system now that we have nothing. It doesn't mean anything. And they're telling you it does, man. The Khazarian Mafia decides to infiltrate and hijack all the world's banking. So the KM used their vast fortune to enter into a system of banking based on secret Babylonian Money-Magick. They claim to have learned from evil spirits of the evil spirit of Baal in return for many child sacrifices to him.
Something strange is going on.
The Babylonian Money-Magick involved it's essentially the credit, the paper credit certificates for gold, which I just said, and silver deposits, which allow travelers to travel with their money in a form that is offered easy replacement. So they lose the certificates or have them stolen, so they would know whenever they have money, which is weird. This is why I think people should buy gold. I eventually wanted to invest, but it's hard because money, it's crazy. I sent you that video of that Irish guy looking at the prices of stuff in Canada. He's like, I don't know what a Dunkaroo is, but he's like, I wouldn't be paying $10 for that shit. And it's so expensive. Everything is. I remember, like, it's crazy. If people don't understand, we'll never go back to that 2000 era time where people were free and everything was cheaper and you could buy a house for cheap. Like with the money that we have saved up, we could have bought a nice house in the early 2000s, even 10 years ago. And they're doing this on purpose, everybody. They want you to own nothing. And if we just keep laying low and not doing anything, it's going to keep happening, man. And all of a sudden you'll be in a pod.
Like you even mentioned Oliver Cromwell there. Like it even goes back as far as like when there was that like that whole Cromwellian conquest of Ireland. Like he basically took over, and even in Wexford where I live, there was a thing called the sack of Wexford, which they basically came in. Bear with me for 1 sec.
Yeah, I think we should dive into some of that stuff too, the Irish history, because I'm fascinated, because I know that I have lineage to Ireland at some point of my family. So I would think it'd be fascinating to like know, you know what I mean? To like know some of the ancient history. And I have some cool episodes, and specifically like there's some cool stuff we can do within Canada and weird cases that have happened and the history of it. The Myth is Canada I want to do, but I'm fascinated about some of the Irish culture and surrounding even like Scotland, just to dive into some. I want to learn as much as possible. I'm thriving that, you know what I mean? Jesus fucking
yeah, so in October 1649, Oliver Cromwell's army stormed and sacked the Irish royalist city of Wexford, allegedly whilst the defenders were trying to negotiate a surrender. It is now remembered as one of the worst atrocities in Irish history. So he basically, like, Wexford, where I live
Yeah.
now, is like a pretty big town and probably eventually bordering on like a small city.
Yeah.
By Irish standards, that is. But like he like this was like one of the worst, like they call it like one of the worst atrocities in Irish history. But he basically he sent like his fucking Commonwealth forces or whatever into
Yeah.
the town while they were trying to like negotiate a surrender. And he killed, what was it? He killed now, bear in mind that this was 1649, so you can imagine this small town in the southeast of Ireland
Yeah.
was probably a very small population. He killed 5,000 people.
That's crazy.
But it was that thing again where there's lots of different like history and stories about stuff like that where people like that would come in, and I think it kind of ties into what you said later on about like Rothschilds and the idea of like the banking systems and this like money token thing. They would do a similar thing. People that were left alive were given like money tokens on like loan,
Yeah.
and then you would pay like interest on them, but it was like this never ending cycle of like you could never actually pay back. So they would just come into a town, take your property and your business from you, and then you would rent it back from them with interest. So like you could never get to the end of
That's
like
what's happening. It's like, how are you free, motherfuckers? Listen to me. How are you free if you need permission by the government to do anything on your own property? If you want to build something out back of my property, and if it's big enough, you have to ask the fucking county why. It's my property, and it's so retarded because in property tax, the idea of a property tax, you have to pay property tax, or like whatever, it goes towards the community. But if you don't, you have your house taken away. So how would you actually own it? We already own nothing, and people don't realize that. Like how it's like your house is on crown land. That crown is the Church of England. Canada still is owned, and people don't even notice. And like, it's just like symbolic fucking ball. No, it's not, you fucking retards. So interesting how the very problem that was stated by the Khazarian Mafia also had the solution provided by them. Eventually, the Khazarian king and his small surrounding court infiltrated Germany with a group of the choice, the name, the Brewers, which I think is part of the families, we'll get into that, of Germany, to represent them and carry the Baal-powered system of evil. I hope I'm pronouncing this. The Brewers of the Red Shield, which represented their secret blood-based child sacrifice, changed their name to Rothschild, aka Child of Rock Satan. Which is going to go pretty deep because we're eventually going to talk about this, the Illuminati bloodlines. Brewer, the Rothschilds, had 5 sons who infiltrated and took over the European banking and the City of London central banking system through various crafty covert operations, including false flags of the Napoleon winning against the British when he actually lost. Which is interesting too, because that movie that's coming out, I'll watch it, but it's definitely going to be propaganda. But Napoleon was the one that stated like history is just like the victors of history or whatever is just an agreed upon fable, essentially. That's why I'm like watching this doc, because like I say this to people, like people on the Patreon. Every time I do a disclaimer, once I watch another episode of this, and the next one is the rise of Adolf Hitler. So I was like, this should be fun. But like, and I think you should watch it at some point. Watch it with me if you want to join along, because I think you would find it fascinating. It's like some of the most fascinating shit I've ever heard about, if it holds any validity. But I've kind of said that it is a little weird how they've like infiltrated themselves into all this stuff, and that I've watched like probably over my life, I don't know, like 30 hours of war documentaries when I was younger and stuff like that. I know a lot about war. My grandfather was a historian buff. But like, I don't know what we're being told is true on either side, right?
Well, that's the thing. I think we had that conversation before about like the victor is the one who gets the chance to like write history. So like, yeah, we never really have context, and that happened over here as well. Even like with like Irish history books in school and stuff like that, there was like aspects that were like omitted from it, and like things added that weren't things, and then it all, like the whole curriculum had to be changed, and like had to like redo the books and stuff. And I'm like, this all seems like, I mean, people would call me a fucking nerd if I went down to a comic book shop and like was reading anime. I was like, this has gotten to the stage where it's nearly the same though. It's like fan fiction.
Yeah, it is. It's not real, man. They're inserting communist ideas into the schooling system. That's facts. Go look it up, dum-dums. So they allowed, obviously, the Rothschilds, they kind of infiltrated in a lot of ways. Here's these fucking psychopaths, at least some of the Rothschild families. So the Rothschilds set up a private fiat banking system that specialized in making counterfeit money from nothing, changing the precarious usury for the British people using what they had been their own money. This was the black art of Babylonian Money-Magick. They claimed to the insiders that such technology and secret money power was provided to them by the Baal because of their frequent child bleeding out and sacrifice rituals to him. So they got it from this. They're sacrificing these kids, and obviously they must have some contact with them. I've been reading stuff into Alice A. Bailey, the spiritual teacher. Supposedly Madame Blavatsky got some of her stuff from her, which eventually I think you would find that stuff fascinating. So we'll get into some of that stuff, but how these people are like, oh, the spiritual movement, and then they care. And she created the UN, or at least helped create the UN. And I'm fascinated by that stuff because all these people that act like they're these like godly people and care about humanity are really Satanists behind all the scenes. So some experts believe that the Rothschilds genocided the royal family members by staging secretly managed illicit and adulterous bleedings with their own Khazarian men in order to replace the royals with their pretenders to the throne. Like the idea of the British royal family is fucking German. So, and people don't even know that shit. The Rothschilds then covertly ran the British Empire and crafted an evil plan to recover the vast amounts of gold and silver, and British had been paying to China for its high quality silk and spices that were unavailable anywhere else in the world. The Rothschild, through their initial international spying network, had heard of the Turkish opium and its habit-forming characteristics. They employed a convert operation to buy Turkish opium and sell it into China, infecting millions with the bad opiate habit that brought back gold and silver into the Rothschild coffers, but not to the British people. So they're like infiltrating every aspect. And drugs, man. Get people on drugs. Look what happening in fucking countries, man. Everyone's fucking dying from fentanyl. People are slumped over. Look like a U, a backwards U, an upside down U. Literally. In Canada, go to Vancouver, man. People are like this. They're like an arch. We saw someone in Brantford. Chelsea's like, is that guy like tying his shoe? I'm like, no, he's fucked up. And she's like, no, he's tying his shoe. And he's like bent over and the thing. And it's like, could see him. I like your hair. Okay, go away. So the opium addiction created by the Rothschilds' opium sales to China harmed China so much that China went to war on 2 occasions to stop it. These wars were known as the Boxer Rebellions or the Opium Wars, which would be kind of interesting to dive into. The money that the Rothschilds gained from the sale of opium was so vast that they became even more addicted to the easy money than the opiate addicts were to the opium. So you get addicted to this money and how they control it. So I just want to get through some of this big information. The Rothschilds were funding the source behind the establishment of the American colonies by incorporating the Hudson Bay Company and other trading companies to exploit the New World of Americas. It was the Rothschilds who ordered the mass extermination and genocide of the indigenous people of North America to allow the exploitation of the vast natural resources of the continent. To me, it doesn't sound too crazy. I think that could be very possible.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My mic was somehow muted there. Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole thing is just wild. Like even like my grandfather was in the UN for years, and he spent a lot of time in Cyprus and stuff when like the Turks and stuff were having all that like conflict over there. And even he said, like, and obviously it's not directly related, but he was like, there was way more, like, having been like boots on the ground there for a couple of years. He was like, there was way more to all those situations than you were led to believe. Like when we would come back home to Ireland and like the version that everybody had here
Oh, yeah.
versus the actual reality. He was like, it was wild.
100%. People don't even know what's going on in Europe right now.
Yeah.
When it comes to the
Yeah.
protests and stuff like that, people are just so unaware, like consumed by their own bullshit. And it's just like we're all one. And once we realize that,
and it is that thing as well. It reminds me of what we had that conversation about like Faces of Death, and the reason that was so popular in the video era was because like people were obsessed with like seeing this. And it's I don't know if you can hear that rain outside. It's fucking hell.
Really? It's how beautifully sunny it is out. It's February in Canada. Normally it'd be snow on the ground, but thank God to the global warming that it's beautiful outside.
Oh, it's absolutely disastrous here.
Come move here. Like I said, live in communism together.
But fucking
But fucking
what was I gonna say? But fucking wasn't it? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, like here, for example, there's a lot of shit going on in this country right now. But if I turn on the 6 o'clock news, it's two teenagers killed in like car accident. And I'm like, I'm not saying that that's not like a bad thing or anything, but we have like, a 40-minute news story about like a crash. And
it's
I'm
all
like,
distraction,
okay,
right?
what about the protest with 300,000 people?
It just shows you that it's controlled, man. Like all of it. So the Rothschilds also followed the same business template in the Caribbean and the Asian subcontinent of India, resulting in the murders of millions of innocent people. The Rothschilds started the international slave trade and enterprise that view these kidnapped humans were mere animals, a view that the Khazarians would impose onto the people of the world who were not part of their evil circle, which they called the old black nobility. And we're gonna talk about the black nobility pretty soon. I have some articles that we can definitely dive into. But this is why listen to people like Diabolic, right? Hip hop woke me up. Diabolic talks about he's like the black nobility, and he's like black don't refer to the color of these people's faces. Their powdery skin makes them the proudest racist. It's like actually like he's like dives down that shit. It's fascinating. So the Rothschilds' next big project was to start a worldwide slave trade, buying slaves from crooked tribal chiefs in Africa who worked with them to kidnap members of the competing tribes for sales of slaves. The Rothschild slave trade then took these kidnapped slaves on ships, crammed into cells to the America and the Caribbean where they were sold. Many died on sea due to bad conditions. The Rothschild bankers learned early on that the war was a great way to double their money in a short time by lending money to both warring sides. And I truly believe that that's true. But in order to guarantee the collection, they had to get taxation laws passed, which could be used to enforce payment. And everyone watching this and listening to this starting soon on YouTube, I'll be doing some short like 10-15 minute videos of breaking down taxation. I'm going to give my opinions about the government and some solutions that we can do in longer format rather than everyone's like, we need solutions. I'm trying to make people aware on Instagram and some of my videos of what's going on. And once you need awareness and people to awaken first. And then the solutions are very simple, like do not comply, work together, talk to your neighbors, all that kind of stuff, right? There is solutions to this, and nobody wants to think about it for themselves. They want someone else to think about it for them. So I want to eventually push people towards the YouTube because I will be doing some videos to be like, come on, people. It's not that hard to think about the solutions of this if we band together, right? At the end of the day.
Have you heard of that thing about like basically like what is it, like removing the, let me see, I had read something about this earlier and I put it in my notes. People believe that it may be possible to remove the influence of the Khazarian Mafia and such forces from our lives, but we would need to take very bold actions. One example is ending our dependency on money and transferring wealth from the dollar to the human being in a system called sacred economics, which doesn't use money at all.
That's pretty interesting. I'd like to dive into that. You should send me that article. Maybe we could do an episode about it.
Apparently there's a book called Sacred Economics by a guy called, let me see.
Send that to me and I will read it.
Yeah, this dude, anyway, he's an American public speaker, teacher, and author. His work covers a wide range of topics, including the history of human civilization, economics, spirituality, Key themes explored are anti-consumerism, interdependence, and the myth, and how myth and narrative have influenced modern day culture.
Yeah, we should. I want to start diving into some of that, giving some solutions and stuff. So send me that article at some point because I'll probably get the book. The KM Rothschild private fiat counterfeit banksters plot to an eternal revenge against the American colonists in Russia who assisted them for losing the Revolutionary War. When the Rothschild lost in the American Revolution, they blamed the Russian Tsar and the Russians for assisting the colonists by blockading British ships. They swore eternal revenge on the American colonists, just as they had with Russia when Charlie's losing his mind. Chelsea's vacuuming. Just as they had with the Russias and their allies crushed Khazaria in 1000 AD, the Rothschilds and their English oligarchy that surrounded them plotted ways to retake America, and this became their main obsession. Which look at the America right now. Their favorite plan was to set up America's central bank featuring Babylonian Money-Magick and secret counterfeiting. That's what we call the Federal Reserve, obviously. The Rothschild KM attempted to retake America in 1812 on behalf of the Khazarian Mafia, but fails once again because of Russia's interference. And maybe it's that why they're trying to make Russia the boogeyman. Is that why? The failure enraged the Rothschild KM, and they once again plotted revenge against both Russians and the American colonists and planned to infiltrate, hijack both nations and assets, tyrannize, and then mass murder both nations and their populations. The KM attempted to set up private American central bank and blocked that were blocked by President Andrew Jackson, who called them satanic and vowed to root them out by the grace and power of the Almighty God. The Rothschild, so pretty crazy. The Rothschild bankers regrouped, continued their covert attempts to install their own Babylonian Money-Magick banks inside of America. In 1913, the Rothschild KM established a beachhead by bribing crooked and treasonous members of Congress to pass a illegal and unconstitutional Federal Reserve Act on Christmas Eve without nobody cared. Like they just did it on purpose. Like nobody went against it. They just did it illegally. And that's why like a lot of people think that the World War I was to help set up the Federal Reserve. There's a bunch of stuff, but it's not a Federal Reserve. It's owned by like the world, right? They transfer all the money wealth. And during world wars, right, they were like, here, give your money to us because you don't want it to go anywhere. The war's going on in Europe. Give your money to us. We'll safe house it. And then America became the superpower run by Jews, supposedly.
Yeah, like the whole thing.
It was Jews' fault.
The whole thing is just so fucked, man. When you like, when you think back, like like Germany wins World War One, and there's just like that whole thing of like, where I had written this down in my notes as well. The Zionists told England they would ensure they would win the war if they promised them the land of Israel in the Middle East. England had agreed. Americans were manipulated into joining World War One to help destroy Germany, which they barely did. Zion got their land in Palestine to form Israel. The whole thing, like, is just you can't just discredit it though and say, oh no, it's too far-fetched. I'm like, no.
Follow the money.
These things actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real thing. And like, the idea of something like the Federal Reserve or whatever, I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. Like I can't remember who I was listening to earlier that said something about World War III, and they were like, "We'll never see a World War III because if it starts between, like, say, the US and Russia or anyone like that, we're going to have a nuclear war and that's it." But I don't know. Like the flip side of that is, I see a lot of people talk about, a group like this would kind of want to start a World War III in a way because, I mean, especially now after you've seen what happened with COVID and like this disease fucking X shit and all. I mean, imagine this, right? Imagine that we all wake up tomorrow, God forbid, and they announce that World War III is starting and all this shit, the whole world is like fucked, basically.
Yeah.
And like in a matter of hours, the entire world would be on their knees. Like we would, like everyone would just lose their fucking shit. Like we all lost our shit over COVID. So it's
Too
like,
much.
yeah. So like if something like that happened, like if people turned on their TVs and they were getting like those fucking news bulletins where it was like potential nuclear fucking missile risk and all this shit, you imagine how quickly everything would fall apart. And then I think that's where they would swoop in then and have like this one world government, like
Digital currency. That's what they want. That's why they
yeah,
have to
we're like the
resist it.
heroes here. We're gonna fucking, they like to control the Federal Reserve, loans, monopolies, media, and everything. I think it just fits into their like
Yeah, they want that's why they want people to be subservient to the government. They want people to have the dependence on the government. That's why like even people I know talking about like, UBI would be great. And it's like, no, it wouldn't. Where do you fucking think the money comes from, man? Like, give me a fucking break, dude. Like because they've inflated the monetary system so much, they're giving you the excuse of we'll give you a basic income, which also comes from the inflation of money because it's your money that they're not using. It doesn't make sense. These people are like, we need that. I would be able to live if I had that. No, you'd be able to live. They start fucking printing our money into nothingness. It's fucking crazy. Everyone buy gold, but then they've hoarded all the gold. There's no gold in fucking Fort Knox. They all took it. And that's why, think about this. Switzerland, when they have all those Davos meetings, why is Switzerland always neutral? Why? Because they're fucking hiding all the gold there, man.
like here's in an article I had seen, and again, like this is probably an opinion-based thing, but I definitely think there's something to it. Early in the Khazarian Mafia's career of world domination, they decided to create a banking system that lends on interest. This way, they could simply print money and make money off of lending money. This is easy money. They made fortunes like this
100%.
and in many other ways. They were the ones who triggered every single war and recession/depression. All of these things are done to generate massive wealth overnight. For example, Napoleon had lost some war, so the Rothschilds at the time hauled ass to England, sold all of his security deposits, then spread rumors that Napoleon won the war, which raised fears among the people, who then sold all their security deposits as well. Once the price of the deposits hit the floor, the Rothschilds bought them all back and hauled ass out of England again. In that very moment, he enriched himself by 21-fold at least, so he was now 21 times richer, all within months. As you can see, these Machiavellian motherfuckers have total control on how wealth is distributed across the world. They pre-planned World War I, II, and potentially III if they do it. They set up false flags and triggered wars. They funded both sides of the war with high-interest loans, which continued to make them a fortune. They are planning for World War III to involve a war between Zionism and Arabs. When depression happens, it happens because they withdraw massive amounts of money from the economy. For example, during the Great Recession, they took 1/3 of all loose cash from the economy, and people suffered needlessly.
100%, man. It's all set up, and they're all gonna set up, and we'll break some of this down. Like I said, this is we're going pretty deep on this. Like we're probably gonna be doing this for the next like hour just to break some of this stuff down, to make people aware of what's going on. And so at the same time, they created this illegal tax system in America that also bribed members of Congress and improved the Internal Revenue Service, which private collection agency and corporations in Peru. And this is why I'm gonna be doing videos about taxation, because taxation is theft. People are like, wow, well, you can't use the hospitals and stuff. Our healthcare is fucked, man. Nobody's getting shit. What am I paying for? There's fucking potholes in the ground. Boy, I paid for fucking refugees to come over here and to give them fucking hotels and shit, or even the Americans. What's going on with that invasion and how they're literally giving illegal immigrants cell phones, hotel rooms, foods, all in the backs of real people that work hard. And then there's immigrants beating cops, giving the finger to the camera. They're getting bail. Who paid for their fucking bail after they beat the shit out of a cop, and then once they get out, they're giving the middle finger, fuck you. Like, what do you think is going on? Everyone needs to rise up against this.
Like here.
How is Americans not fucking rising up? You guys have the guns. It's in your constitution to like stand up against that, literally, and nobody's doing it. And it's just like, what are you guys you waiting for it to really pop off, and then you're going to fucking do something? Because at the end of the day, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't do anything if there's not everyone else is on board. I'm not going to risk my life and my future to go be like, yeah, take down the government. And this is me standing there with a picket sign. You know what I mean? Or these climate activists that are fucking retarded, man, gluing their fucking hands to someone glued their hand to the ground while burning a stroller. I'm like, these people are psychotic, man, and they're being brainwashed. Soon after the setup of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the fucking FBI, to protect these bankers, specifically the banker system, to serve the cover-up needs and prevent them from ever being prosecuted of their child sacrifice rituals, pedophile networks, and to also serve the court of intel operations on their behalf. Note that the FBI has no official charter, according to the Library of Congress, has no rights to exist or issue paychecks. So people need to really take back their power and start. And we need and like I said, I don't have the money or means to actually change the entire system. But guess who does? Guess who does? Guess who does? People like Elon Musk, man. There's a bunch of people that have the money and means to do this, and they're just like buying X so you guys can argue with each other on the fucking internet. Like, give me a break, man. In the well-planned, savage, and inhumane bloodletting and that stunned the world, the Bolsheviks were unleashed in full fury on the behalf of the Khazarian Mafia to gain revenge against Russia. They planned this since the destruction of Khazaria, and this documentary that I'm watching on Patreon actually breaks this down. The Bolsheviks, at the direction of the Rothschild KM, raped and tortured and mass murdered approximately 100 million Russians, including women, children, and infants. Some tortured and bloodletting was so extreme that they were not going to mention it here. We're not going to mention here in this article. We're not going to talk about it because it's so, but I'm going to dive into it. I think people should know. But like, we always talk about, oh, what happened in World War II? What about the Bolshevik Revolution, people? Nobody fucking talks about that shit, and we're going to. But the readers who want to know in some depth in the internet, supposedly research the Red Terror or the Bolshevik Cheka, or watch the classic movie The Chekist, which is available on there. Ooh, people. Go to the Patreon, because once I'm done this 12 part, I'm gonna be watching stuff that people told me not to. I'm gonna be watching stuff that is I want to dive into this. I'm gonna be this old 50-year-old man eventually that just like knows way too much for my own good, like kind of like Brett's dad. The Rothschild KM created a master plan to control all of Judaism and mind control with the K, Judics. The Rothschild KM has hijacked Judaism, partnered off the Babylonian Talmudist Luciferian stuff, obviously to gain control of the banking, as we said, in Wall Street and Congress. So thus the Rothschild could pass the wealth and succeed to those Judiacs who drank the Kool-Aid and used them to cut out certain assets and all that stuff. So going through the finances, obviously the construction and using of Freemason occult architect displayed their commitment to the ancient and Babylonian Talmudism and all the evil that accompanies it, including child sacrifice to Baal. They set up the New World Order and called it the World Zionism, which is taught, and it actually, it's taught that they have racial superiority, which is assumed by that Gentiles were intent on mass murdering all the Jews, right? They convince them like they're going to kill all you because of this or that, and they never talk about why, right? So obviously the first stages to be planned in World War II in the Nazi work camps to cut off supplies, resulting in the deaths of 200,000 Jews. Because their system was designed to use this Babylonian Money-Magick and to cut out certain people, and so later be sacrificed to Lucifer in 2 stages, supposedly, which is fascinating because you can clearly see that's. I did a video where I was like, war. What is it good for? The sacrificial murder of ritualistic murder of children, men, and women, right? So it's pretty fascinating. This number is 5% of what Khazarian Mafia. Okay, here we go. This is gonna be interesting. So they say that all these people died of disease, right? Along with 90,000 non-Judiac inmates from the same causes, according to the respected Red Cross official figures. Red Cross is also a satanic thing people don't realize. Read the name off. This number is 5% of what the Khazarian Mafia, aka the World Zionists, claim. That's why I said if you actually research, it's not as many people as they said. They need to inflate the numbers to convince people that it was this horrible thing, which it was. Like I say, it wasn't, but it was inflated. I do believe that. The second great sacrifice would be the final one, when the New World Order Luciferian king would be placed into power and all 3 Abrahamic religions would be eradicated. Especially Judaism. which would be blamed for all the wars and destruction of the world. By then, the Rothschilds would gain and morph themselves into a new identity, not associated with Judaism in any form, not even world Zionism. It's just, I just picture like fucking just like the curly cues and the hats and like them like transforming like like a transformer, and then they become like Lucifer. It sounds bad, but it's funny. It's a lot of information. I wanted to break down and get through some of this because it's fascinating. Because I want people to know. I don't want to leave anything out, so people actually understand the history of this stuff, right?
And there's, to be honest with you, like as much research as you've probably done and all, I feel like this will be one of the more extensive like episodes of something. There's not, like, I went looking.
I know.
There isn't a massive amount of stuff out there, really, to be honest.
Like I said, I want people to know that we're not, this is just speculation. Understand that. You know, we're just asking some questions, you know?
Which you should be allowed, like, you shouldn't even have to preface a show by saying, like, we're allowed to ask a question.
100%.
But
it's
that's
so
like
weird.
the world we live in now, and it kind of ties into what we're talking about. Is they've created a version of reality and culture where, like, we would be seen as like we would be like the witches.
I know.
From like back in those times where it's like, oh, you've like questioned something or whatever. Yep, put her on the stake and burn her.
100%, man. And I've had all, it's funny because I've had all sorts of people on the show. I've had a gay host, a black host. I've had like, we've had all sorts of people on it. So you can't bring up this thing of you're this or that because you can't label me shit. Cause I have family that's fucking Jamaican. Go eat my ass, man. All right. It is important to realize that the Rothschilds took Germany down to nothing after World War I, and created a vacuum for fascism, and then rebuilt it, creating Nazism, installing Hitler as the counterforce to the Russian Bolshevism. So this will be interesting. Well, this is a comment that documentary is talking about this, but it is I said during the Secret Society episode that the weird correlation between our history now and what happened after World War I is fascinating, because after World War I, Germany was destroyed. They had to pay all these reparations towards certain nations. They were poor. And then we're going to get into an episode about this. Maybe you and me and Brett can cover this because he can display his German accent because it's very funny. But like the idea that they eroded their society, Berlin, they're all doing these weird sexual practices. There was promiscuity. Like at the time, if you're rich enough, you could like, because there's just everyone's starting to get phone like lines. They were able to call up like child prostitutes, all sorts of shit. Look up what happened in Germany, man, after World War I, and how it was this like sex capital of the world. You could do the weird, they're fucking animals, dude, and not everybody, but there was underground clubs everywhere that were doing the worst degenerate stuff. There was transsexual stuff going on. And now look at our society now. And it was supposedly infiltrated by communists because the gender ideology and critical race theory is used by communist agenda, the Bolsheviks, to erode society from within, to erase the boundaries. And then eventually bring in, child pedophilia and stuff like that. It's fucking weird.
But again, it all ties in. Like, it's not like it doesn't make that's the thing. I think if you really look at it and analyze it, it's not like it doesn't make sense or it doesn't have a place. Like, it would be different if we were talking about something like this and then you went completely left field and you were like, oh yeah, and also like the pyramids, something, blah blah blah, and it's like a completely different thing. If you actually look at the timelines, it does all.
It adds up. They got the tentacles into everything. So Hitler became a problem for the Khazarian Mafia when he broke free and began acting in the interest of the German people and to free the people of the world and develop his own banking system free of the Rothschilds. Now, I'm not saying, I'll never say that Hitler was the good guy. Get my words right, all right? I think he was a one-ball, little pathetic man that couldn't paint well and wanted to be an artist, but factual, he did kick out the Rothschild banking system. That is fucking facts. You can deny it all you want. Research it. Look it up. It's factual. So Hitler introduced a financial system that was free of usury and the benefits the working class. This mandated the utter destruction of Germany and the German people because the Rothschilds and the Khazarians could never allow the economic system that did not depend on their usury to exist. We see this The same thing today with the Khazarian war against Islam, because Islam forbids usury. Makes a little fucking sense, doesn't it? This is why Israel is so vocal and aggressive about destroying the Islamic people of the world. And I see this, man. People are so fucking hateful against. There's some Muslim practices that are bad, right? And I feel like who knows if they got infiltrated and stuff like that. But they have burned women. Certain sections of Islam have burned women at the stake for being speaking out and stuff like that. But let's play this clip. This is a longer clip, but I want everyone to think about this, have an open mind. So what I want people to do is just have an open mind. And this is some sort of Jewish rabbi. He's got the little hat on, and he must be speaking in Hebrew because there's subtitles over, and you'll hear what he's saying. But just think about this, okay? Open mind.
Why did Hitler really hate the Jews? What did he want from them? How did they bother him? But it's all written here in Mein Kampf. This book was published only recently. It just got approved to be translated to Hebrew. It was forbidden all these years. But there is an earlier translation. It was made by Yad Vashem. They were allowed to. Hitler claims in his book that the Jews are communists. They made the Russian Revolution. They killed their 30 million Russians, all the intelligent ones, in a cruel and horrific way. And that's their plan for the entire world. The next country in line is Germany. They founded the German communist and socialist parties, and it's true. If we don't defeat them now, they will eliminate us, and they will slaughter another 20 million, all the intelligent people. And that's how they want, from country to country. So eventually, the only intelligent ones remaining would be the Jews. And he repeats it many times. Make no mistake. And he is right. The Russian Revolution was made by the Jews. The Russian army was built by Trotsky, who was an incredible genius and anti-Semite like no other. He created the Jewish division of the Communist Party, which members inform on their father, mother, brother, and son. Whoever owns a Siddur, or even a Hebrew learning book. I'm not even talking about Teflin or Mikvah. He destroyed everything, also by the Jews, but for sure by the Russians. In the first picture of the Russian government, out of 13 members, 6 were Jews. Who founded the KGB? Jews. So everything is clearly written. He didn't hate the Jews because they had pios. He didn't hate them for observing mitzvot. Because they are communists. And he writes it clearly. The Jews destroyed religion and faith. They spread in Germany the heresy in God because they don't believe in him. He writes this right here. Now you understand why they don't teach it in schools? Because who writes the curriculum? Those same leftists. They destroyed all the values, poisoned literature and theater. Who did it? Torah-observant Jews poisoned the German theater? Out of 9 large German newspapers, 7 were owned by Jews. So do you understand why it's forbidden here to teach about him? And what he says?
Isn't that weird? That's a Jewish guy saying that. Sorry, man. Why are we not allowed to talk about this shit? Very interesting. Welcome back, you filthy goyim. We are diving back into part 2 of the Khazarian Mafia. I think I'm saying Khazarian sometimes, and it's Khazarian. But welcome back to the show, everybody. What's up, you filthy goyim?
I love how you use that. I did actually think, though, for like 2 weeks that it was Khazarian. And I was like, why does it keep like spell checking me or like correcting me. I was like, is it that hidden that I can't find it?
No, it's Khazarian. But I pronounce everything wrong. So welcome back to the show, everybody. I am one of your hosts, Tomcat, aka Tom Thompson, the Raptilian. Find my music on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. I'd appreciate it. We're getting a lot of love for the Fuck Trudeau song. And welcome back. Obviously, you only see a part of this on YouTube, most likely. But it will be on Rumble and BitChute. And it's kind of funny. We released it on X. Went live on X to it, and it got like a good amount of people watching it, but we lost 20 followers. So I was like, well, yeah, I know. I even commented, I was like, I took it off. I think it just disappeared, of course, because Elon Musk is in the pockets of the Khazarian Mafia, I'm pretty sure. And then I did a thing. I was like, if questioning what's going on is going to lose us followers, I would rather have the people that actually do question shit, because like I said, I am just a man with questions. I have nothing against anybody. A disclaimer here. I truly don't. I stand for one thing, and that is humanity. I want to know the truth, and I do think once you start to look at and you follow the money, it's very weird. And if you're not allowed to question, you're a slave then already. Yeah. It's true, right? If you're not allowed to question anything, I want to say something too, because I'm watching like a very controversial documentary on the Patreon. Fuck the Zionists, fuck the Nazis, fuck all forms of government. I don't like any side. So and so funny that people are so consumed by this communist stuff now that there's people like, it seems like a lot of younger kids come out of the woodwork to defend communism. And if you start to research, fascism has brought death, democracy, quotations, it's not really democracy, has brought death, and communism has also brought death. So the thing is, people don't even know about the 30 million, I'm pretty sure it's around that number, that died during the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They just slaughtered innocent people, and that was communists that were and who controlled the communists? Well, you know, if you're here.
Yeah, that's right for you commies.
It's crazy. It's crazy the amount of people that defend it and defend like Karl Marx when the guy thought he was possessed by the devil, man. Very weird.
It's just like
or some sort of demon. But if you haven't listened to the first part, let us catch you up.
But it was Joe's fault.
All right, you're caught up.